Welcome back. I'm your host at Navy Legends, and I want to begin this one with a word that has not appeared in any previous scenario we have analyzed on this channel. A word that belongs to a different era of naval warfare, to the Battle of the Atlantic, to the Grey Wolves of the Kriegsmarine, to the tactical doctrine that came closer than any other in history, to severing the maritime supply lines of an entire alliance. The word is Wolfpack. In the Second World War, a Wolfpack was a coordinated group of submarines operating as a unit, not in close formation, not in visual contact with each other, but in a dispersed tactical arrangement covering multiple quadrants of a target's approach corridor, coordinating their attacks via radio, timing their strikes to arrive from different bearings simultaneously, so that a single convoy escort could not concentrate its anti-submarine resources against any one threat without exposing its hull to the others. The Wolfpack was defeated in the Atlantic by a combination of air cover, improved sonar, convoy routing, and above all by cracking the communications that coordinated the submarine's movements. But the tactical concept, multiple submarines, multiple approach bearings, compressed engagement timeline, defender forced to divide anti-submarine resources across simultaneous contacts in different sectors, never became obsolete. It became a blueprint, and the People's Liberation Army Navy has been building submarines capable of executing that blueprint for 20 years. On September 11th, 2028, in the Philippine Sea, they tested it. The date is September 11th, 2028. The time is 2:44 local. The Philippine Sea, approximately 220 nautical miles east of Luzon and 310 nautical miles northeast of the Babuyan Islands. The USS Carl Vinson, CVN-70, a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, is operating as the flagship of Carrier Strike Group 1, deployed to the Philippine Sea in response to the most acute phase of the Taiwan Strait crisis since the People's Liberation Army began its military exercises around the island on August 24th. The strike group's screen is fully deployed. The cruiser USS Lake Erie, CG-70, on the northwestern threat axis. The destroyers USS Sterett, DDG-104, and USS Chung-Hoon, DDG-93, on the northern and eastern screening positions, and the destroyer USS Halsey, DDG-97, on the southern screen. Two Los Angeles-class submarines, USS Annapolis, SSN-760, and USS Alexandria, SSN-757, are operating as submerged ASW screens 80 to 120 nautical miles ahead of the strike group, covering the northwestern and northern approach corridors. The Carl Vinson is at moderate flight operations tempo. 4 FA-18Fs airborne on combat air patrol, 1 E-2D Hawkeye on the northern station, 2 MH-60R Seahawks at 30-minute deck alert for the ASW screen roll. The strike group commander, Rear Admiral Lisa Park, aboard the Carl Vinson, had assessed a submarine threat as the highest probability near-term engagement type in the current crisis posture. Her assessment was correct. What she had not fully anticipated was the geometry. 3-plan Type 093B nuclear attack submarines had been positioning in the Philippine Sea for 11 days. The positioning had been deliberate and patient, each boat approaching the Carl Vinson strike group's projected operating area from a different quadrant over a period of days, using the Philippine Sea's deep water environment and the background noise of the increasing commercial traffic diversion routes to mask their transits. By September 9th, all 3 boats were in position. Changzheng 24, approximately 160 nautical miles to the northwest, inside the acoustic coverage gap created by the convergence zone geometry between the USS Annapolis and the strike group's hull-mounted sonars. Changzheng 28, approximately 190 nautical miles to the east, outside the primary protective anti-submarine screen, and Changzheng 31, approximately 140 nautical miles to the south-southwest, in the baffles sector of the Halsey's towed array sonar, where the destroyer's own propulsion noise created an acoustic shadow that masked the submarine's presence. 3 boats, 3 quadrants, an equilateral triangle of threat with the Carl Vinson at its center. The coordinated attack plan, designated Dragon Strike by the Plan Joint Operations Command, was built around a precise timing architecture. All 3 submarines would fire their weapons within a 40-second window, timed to produce arrival of all threats within a 10-minute engagement window at the strike group. Chung-Hoon from the northwest would fire 4 submarine-launched YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missiles and 2 U-6 torpedoes, the cruise missiles to demand Aegis air defense engagement. The torpedoes to arrive during the window when the strike group's ASW helicopters were committed to the cruise missile threat. Chung-Hoon 28 from the east would fire 4 U-6 torpedoes, a pure torpedo attack aimed at the Carl Vinson herself, approaching from the sector with the lowest ASW helicopter coverage. Chung-Hoon 31 from the south-southwest would fire 2 submarine-launched YJ-18 cruise missiles and 2 U-6 torpedoes, a second mixed axis designed to force the southern screening destroyer to split its defensive attention between air and underwater threats simultaneously. 8 U-6 heavyweight torpedoes, 6 submarine-launched YJ-18 cruise missiles, approaching from 3 separate quadrants. Within a 40-second launch window, the coordinated fire order was transmitted to all 3 submarines via ELF at 2:44:09. Chung-Hoon 24 fired first at 2:44:22. Chung-Hoon 31 fired at 2:44:31. Chung-Hoon 28 fired at 02:44:59. 17 seconds outside the 40-second window, because her commanding officer had a degraded fire control solution on the Carl Vinson's precise position and required an additional passive sonar track update before weapon release. The USS Annapolis, operating 90 nautical miles northwest of the Carl Vinson, detected the Chung-Hoon 24's torpedo tube, opening transients at 2:44:18, 4 seconds before the first weapon left the PLAN submarine's tube. The Annapolis's commanding officer had been tracking a faint possible contact on the same bearing for 22 minutes, a narrow-band acoustic line that had been marginally above the detection threshold, attributed to probable biologics on the previous track assessment. The tube opening transient removed all ambiguity. His contact report reached the Carl Vinson's ASW coordinator at 2:44:31, 9 seconds after Chung-Hoon 24's first weapon launch, with the U-6 torpedoes now in the water and the YJ-18 missiles climbing toward cruise altitude. The Carl Vinson's strike group had warning. Not the kind of warning that changes the fundamental geometry of what was already in the water. The U-6 torpedoes were running, the YJ-18 rounds were climbing, and the timing of the engagement had been set by the submarines before the first contact report arrived. But warning enough to begin the defensive response before the threats reached their detection ranges from the strike group's own sensors. Both MH-60R Seahawks were off the Carl Vinson's deck at 2:45:14, 43 seconds after the Annapolis contact report, vectored to the northwestern datum, where Chung-Hoon 24's weapons had originated. A third, MH-60R, from the Sterett, launched at 2:45:22. The Carl Vinson began acceleration to maximum speed and executed a hard starboard turn to open the distance from the northwestern threat axis, simultaneously presenting her stern to the eastern approach corridor, where the Chung-Hoon 28's pure torpedo attack was still undetected. The YJ-18 cruise missiles from Chung-Hoon 24 and Chung-Hoon 31 became visible on the Lake Erie's SPY-1BV radar at 2:46:44, 62 seconds after launch, as the missiles climbed to cruise altitude. 6 contacts total. 4 from bearing 306 degrees, the northwest, Chung-Hoon 24's axis. 2 from bearing 218 degrees, the south-southwest, Chung-Hoon 31's axis. at ranges of 140 and 108 nautical miles, respectively, from the Lake Erie. The Lake Erie and the Halsey began building SM-6 engagement solutions simultaneously, the Lake Erie taking the northwestern 4 contacts, the Halsey taking the 2 southern contacts. At 2:47:03, 19 seconds after first cruise missile detection, the Chung-Hoon's EN/SQS-53C hull sonar registered the first U-6 acoustic contact from the eastern approach corridor, bearing 088 degrees, speed consistent with 45 knots. No range resolution on first detection. The contact was at the boundary of reliable passive sonar range. The Chung-Hoon's ASW coordinator classified it as a probable torpedo at 2:47:11 and immediately notified the strike group tactical coordinator. A second contact, bearing 093 degrees, appeared on the Chung-Hoon's sonar at 02:47:19. Chung-28's second U-6 in the water from a slightly offset firing bearing, designed to bracket the Carl Vinson's likely evasive maneuver arc. The strike group now had a confirmed picture. 6 cruise missiles approaching from northwest and south-southwest, demanding SM-6 and ESSM engagement. 4 U-6 torpedoes from the eastern sector at unknown, but closing range demanding ASW helicopter response, and 2 additional U-6 torpedoes from Chung-24's launch that the USS Annapolis was already positioning to intercept from the northwest. 8 torpedoes total, 6 cruise missiles total, 3 submarines operating simultaneously, 1 strike group with finite ASW helicopter capacity, finite SM-6 inventory, and a carrier that could not maneuver freely in any direction without closing the range on at least 1 torpedo threat. Rear Admiral Park's allocation decision, transmitted to all ships at 2:47:28, was built around a single operational reality. The Carl Vinson had to be the last line of defense against the eastern U-6 contacts, because the carrier herself was the only hull in the strike group, large enough that her torpedo avoidance maneuver options, 22-knot evasion, defensive maneuvering, would be the difference between hull impact and a near miss. Everything else in the engagement had to be handled by the screen while the Carl Vinson maneuvered. She ordered the Chung-Hoon to sprint east and interpose between the Carl Vinson and the eastern torpedo bearing, using the destroyer's AN/SLQ-25 on Nixie decoy and her active sonar to attract the torpedoes away from the carrier. She ordered the Halsey south to prosecute Chung-31's torpedo pair. She directed the 3 airborne MH-60Rs to the eastern YU-6 contacts as first priority, the closest threat to the carrier herself, and she ordered the Carl Vinson to maximum speed on course 090 degrees, due east, directly away from the northwestern and southwestern threat axes, accepting the risk of closing the eastern range in exchange for opening the distance on the torpedo threats that already had longer time of flight. The SM-6 engagement of the 6 cruise missiles ran from 2:49:11 to 2:51:44. The Lake Erie expended 8 SM-6 rounds against the 4 northwestern contacts, 2 per contact. All 4 contacts neutralized in the subsonic cruise phase between 02:49:11 and 02:50:33. The Halsey expended 4 SM-6 rounds against the 2 southern contacts, 2 per contact, both neutralized at 02:51:39 and 02:51:44. All 6 submarine-launched YJ-18 cruise missiles intercepted without a single round, reaching the ESSM engagement layer. The cruise missile threat was resolved cleanly and at extended range. The torpedo engagements were considerably less clean. The USS Annapolis had prosecuted Chung-24's 2 U-6 torpedoes from the northwest. Her commanding officer had elected to attack the source rather than the weapons, a standard counter-torpedo option when the launching submarine's position is known with sufficient confidence. The Annapolis fired 2 Mk-48 ADCAP heavyweight torpedoes at Chung-24's datum at 2:45:41, 19 seconds after the first contact report. The Chung-24 detected the Mk-48 approach at 2:47:33 and executed a deep dive and sprint withdrawal at maximum speed. Both Mk-48s tracked the Chung-24 for 21 minutes, the engagement resolving at 03:08:44 when the first Mk-48 detonated against the Chung-24's hull at a depth of 380 meters. The second Mk-48 detonated 10 seconds later in a proximity detonation against the submarine's aft section. The Chung-24's two U-6 torpedoes, now without their guidance mothership update link, continued on their last programmed heading, both running wide of the Carl Vinson's new position after the carrier's high-speed eastward maneuver, and both running to fuel exhaustion at 2:57:18 and 2:57:31, respectively. The Chung-Hoon's interposition between the Carl Vinson and Chung-28's four Eastern U-6 torpedoes was the engagement's most consequential tactical decision. The destroyer, sprinting east at 32 knots with her Nixie deployed at full modified output, placed her hull between the Carl Vinson's acoustic signature and the approaching torpedo contacts. The modified Nixie output, the 8% frequency deviation that had appeared in previous engagements against BAR, 2 USVs and U-6 torpedoes, created tracking ambiguity in the U-6's passive seeker at 4.1 nautical miles from the Chung-Hoon's position. Two of Chung-28's four U-6 torpedoes locked on the Nixie's modified output and began closing toward the decoy rather than the carrier. The other two maintained lock on the Carl Vinson's significantly larger acoustic signature. 97,000 tons of nuclear-powered propulsion at full power was a more acoustically compelling target than the Nixie tow cable's simulated emission, even with the modified frequency. The three airborne MH-60Rs were now prosecuting the two U-6 contacts that had maintained lock on the Carl Vinson. Both helicopters reached their respective datums and dipped sonar within 6 minutes of launch. First Mk-54 in the water at 2:51:19, the round acquiring the U-6 contact in 8 seconds and detonating against the torpedo at 2:51:44, 7.4 nautical miles from the Carl Vinson's current position. Second Mk-54 at 2:52:03, acquiring and detonating at 2:52:38, 6.1 nautical miles from the carrier. Two Eastern U-6 neutralized by Mk-54. Two Eastern U-6 locked on the Chung-Hoon's Nixie, closing toward the decoy. The Chung-Hoon's commanding officer, watching both contacts close on his decoy bearing at 2:53:14, made a decision. He cut the Nixie tow cable, releasing the decoy to run free, while the Chung-Hoon executed a hard port turn away from the decoy's bearing. The two U-6, following the Nixie's acoustic signature, closed on the now free decoy. The first U-6 impacted the Nixie tow body at 2:53:44, the 300-kilogram contact fuse initiating against the steel tow body at full closing speed. The detonation occurred 2.1 nautical miles from the Chung-Hoon's new position and 8.4 nautical miles from the Carl Vinson. The blast was visible from the Carl Vinson's bridge. The second U-6, arriving 8 seconds later, detonated in the turbulence and cavitation field left by the first detonation, the acoustic environment disrupting its seeker lock, enough to produce a proximity rather than contact detonation at 14 meters from the Nixie debris field. Both torpedoes expended. No hull impact. The Halsey's prosecution of Chung-31's two southern U-6 torpedoes was the engagement's final chapter. The destroyer, heading south at 30 knots, launched her own MH-60R at 2:47:44 and deployed her Nixie simultaneously. The MH-60R dipped sonar at 2:50:09 and classified both U-6 contacts at ranges of 8.1 and 9.3 nautical miles from the Halsey. Two Mk-54 rounds in the water at 2:50:44 and 2:51:03. The first Mk-54 acquired and detonated at 2:51:18, neutralizing the closer U-6 at 6.8 nautical miles. The second Mk-54 acquired its target at 025141 and executed a pursuit track. The U-6 executing a 2.4 G evasion turn that the Mk-54's guidance algorithm corrected for in 14 seconds. Detonation at 2:52:09. Second Southern U-6 neutralized at 5.9 nautical miles from the Halsey. Chung-Hoon 31 had not been located. She had fired her weapons and gone deep and fast to the south-southwest. She would be tracked by P-8A Poseidon assets from Clark Air Base for 16 hours before breaking contact in the Philippine Sea deep water. The engagement totals: 8 U-6 torpedoes fired, 6 neutralized by Mk-54 and Mk-48 prosecution, 2 expended against the Chung-Hoon's released Nixie decoy, 0 hull impacts on any U.S. vessel, 6 submarine-launched YJ-18 cruise missiles fired, all 6 intercepted by SM-6 without reaching the ESSM layer. 1 planned Type 093B submarine, the Chung-Hoon 24, assessed as neutralized by dual Mk-48 ADCAP impact at 380 meters depth. 2 submarines, Chung-Hoon 28 and Chung-Hoon 31, withdrew and broke contact. The Carl Vinson's flight operations had been suspended from 2:44 when the emergency maneuvering began. They resumed at 3:44, exactly 1 hour after the USS Annapolis's first contact report. The air wing launched its first combat air patrol sorties of the new cycle at 3:48. The carrier had maneuvered at maximum speed, burned fuel at wartime consumption rates, and kept her flight deck clear for 60 minutes, while 8 heavyweight torpedoes and 6 cruise missiles were prosecuted by her screen. She had not been struck. She had not been slowed. She had not lost a single aircraft. But for 60 minutes, the most capable aviation platform in the U.S. Navy's inventory had been a ship in evasion rather than a carrier generating combat power. The 60 minutes mattered. During that window, the planned land-based H-6K bombers, which had launched from Guangdong Province 40 minutes before Dragon Strike's fire order was transmitted, reached their firing positions south of the Luzon Strait and launched 12 YJ-12 anti-ship cruise missiles, a second-phase strike that the Dragon Strike submarines were intended to enable by compelling the Carl Vinson to suspend flight operations. The YJ-12 strike was engaged by the Lake Erie, the Sterett, and the USS Annapolis's surface mode, Mk-48 alert. All 12 YJ-12 contacts neutralized before reaching the inner engagement envelope. The second phase did not penetrate, but the operational concept it embodied, Wolfpack submarines opening the window, land-based aviation exploiting it, was the architecture that Dragon Strike had been designed to validate. Here at Navy Legends, September 11th, 2028, is the engagement that brings the Wolfpack concept into the 21st century's defining naval theater. 3 Type 093B submarines, 11 days of patient positioning, a 40-second coordinated fire window, 8 torpedoes and 6 cruise missiles from 3 quadrants simultaneously. The engagement was defeated. 1 planned submarine neutralized, all weapons either intercepted or decoyed, the Carl Vinson undamaged and back to flight operations in 60 minutes. But it was defeated at a cost. An entire SM-6 magazine from 2 Aegis hulls, 4 Mk-54 lightweight torpedoes from 3 MH-60Rs, 2 Mk-48 ADCAP rounds from the Annapolis, the Chung-Hoon's Nixie system sacrificed as a torpedo decoy, and 60 minutes of carrier flight operations suspended during the most acute phase of the Taiwan Strait crisis. The plan's Dragon Strike operational review will note that Chung-Hoon 28's 17-second delay outside the 40-second window, caused by a degraded fire control solution on the Carl Vinson's precise position, produced 2 U-6 torpedoes that locked on the modified Nixie output rather than the carrier's hull. 17 seconds. The difference between a torpedo that tracks the decoy and a torpedo that ignores it is 17 seconds of additional passive sonar track time before weapon release. Time that produces a targeting solution accurate enough that the U-6's seeker selects the 97,000-ton carrier over the 40-kilogram tow body. In the next version of Dragon Strike, the fire control solution will be held until all 3 submarines confirm targeting confidence above the threshold that eliminates the Nixie ambiguity. The Philippine Sea is deep and dark and very large. Somewhere in the Celebes Sea, Chung-Hoon 31 is running south. Somewhere in the Philippine Basin, Chung-Hoon 28 is running east. Both boats are intact, experienced, and carrying the knowledge of what September 11th taught about Mk-54 reacquisition geometry, modified Nixie frequency response against the U-6 seeker algorithm, and the 60-minute window between a Wolfpack fire order and a carrier resuming flight operations. The next iteration will incorporate all of it. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the